welcome back to the Cumbria Chamber podcast. This is part 2. We're going to be discussing leadership and management, skills of the future, AI, and the next phase of the LSIP. So to return to this issue of leadership, Kev, the LSIP report highlights that some employers are struggling to find really high quality leadership and management training. What are the issues surrounding leadership that you heard from employers?
Yeah, I think it was a really interesting point that it came up quite a lot. And it's a hard one because if you type in Google or something like that, leadership schools, management courses or whatever, that stuff comes up. But I'm not convinced, they obviously know there's an issue there, but I'm not actually convinced that sometimes we go, right, you need training for this, you know. I'm wondering if more of the route, and I think what they're trying to get at is we need coaching with current staff as well. You know, things have changed a lot, haven't they? And you could have had staff brought in and things are changing. And I think, I don't know, but I think from the top down, there's different management and training, isn't there, for different sectors of people and layers in the organisation. And I think it's coaching, and I don't think it's actually particularly a one course that fits all. Whereas if you go coaching, you can be spoken a little bit more and understand it to the client's needs. I don't know if Alec's got any sort of views on that. I mean, that's where I think that what they are meaning. And when I've talked to some of them, it does seem that is what they're indicating.
Yeah. So Alec, as a leadership coach, this is your bread and butter, really, isn't it? What are the issues that leaders are struggling with?
Well, it's really interesting because I see a real commonality between many leaders I've worked with. And there's an interesting point, and some leaders have admitted this to me as well as some organisations. But the first thing we need to think about here is that there are leaders or managers in their position, but they were put into that position for their technical skills ability, not their managerial or leadership skills ability. And through no fault of their own, they haven't had any training on this. Now, interestingly, again, looking at the bigger picture, looking at the rest of the UK and globally, there has been reports this year, for example, that middle managers, for some, this is maybe their first managerial role, they are being abandoned. No one's training them. They don't know what to do. So there's a whole raft of typical skills issues that we see from that. And it's not just to say it's them. Some leaders that have been trained. The other thing I typically see is a lack of self-awareness. Now, for many leaders, we're so busy running 100 miles an hour. Do we ever get a chance to sit back and reflect on us? What's worked well? What isn't working well?
No, it's true. Yeah.
How does the staff feel towards me? Am I getting my communication right?
Questioning yourself, whether yeah, absolutely.
But there's another interesting kind of thought on this as well. And again, thinking about, how do leaders become more successful going forward? And if you link back to what we're talking about in part 1, about teams and starting to develop them, there's another key benefit to this, is that the leaders, if they have the right team and the team is working, we understand the skills, they can go and collaborate with them and ask their opinion. And the reason I'm mentioning this is because I speak to a number of leaders and they are afraid to be wrong.
Yeah.
They believe they've got to have all of the answers to all of the issues, to all of the questions.
All of the time.
But let's be honest, we're human beings.
No, absolutely.
We cannot know everything. And if you have that team, and you are showing vulnerability, which actually, thinking to our young professionals, they like that. And even other generations, it's sometimes good to show you're not perfect.
Do you?
I think you get more respect for that.
I absolutely agree. And can I just pull you on something, Alec? Really interesting. I read the other day. And I wonder if this is playing a part in the situation that we are now finding. Ultimately, someone leaves a company and you employ another person. At the moment, that's really tough. So sometimes if you lead a senior leader go, they employ the next person who they think should be for that job because they're second in command. But actually, that could be the biggest mistake of their career to do that because they are not a manager yet.
Yeah.
Is that a fair?
That absolutely. And then you've also got the problem, and some managers or leaders have admitted this to me. Part of the reason why they don't want to train their subordinates,
they don't want to give their knowledge away. Yeah.
And they don't want the threat, because we have to be honest. There are leaders and managers out there that are sitting and they think, I don't want any hassle. This will do me till retirement or whatever it might be. I'm just going to coast along.
Yeah.
And they feel no personal benefit to actually develop a team, to develop the skills and have succession planning.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
I think that's a brilliant point. And again, this might be controversial for some.
Yeah,
but we have to be honest. That's what's going on out there.
It may be controversial, and I'm not saying that happens everywhere,
No,
but absolutely, I do think it's a factor that we need to be aware of as well, isn't it? Because it's certainly playing a part, I'm sure. And if you look at all these big companies now that are short of people, we've got to be careful they don't employ the wrong people.
But there is so many benefits though to this idea of distributed leadership, where you kind of outsource the decision making to other members of the team, and you let people kind of lead themselves in a way. Is that something you'd recommend leaders researching?
Yeah, I mean, if you think about, again, what we were talking about earlier with teams and what people want, they want to be, part of this is they want to be empowered, they want to feel involved. And I found, as being a senior leader myself, I am, and many of us, we kind of, we have an unconscious bias. We are thinking our own thoughts.
Yeah.
And actually, I used to always say to my teams, challenge me. Actually, for everything we do here, I want you to tell me where I'm wrong. And that gave us so much more creativity. Did the team like it when I was sometimes wrong? Absolutely. Did I care? No.
You engage with them.
Yeah. It's such an icebreaker. But again, I think this is the other key thing. There's so much changing at the moment. There's so much we need to learn. But the problem is, how can one person or a small group of people do that? The bigger the team is working together, the bigger the knowledge we have, the more we can share. And that is so difficult.
Absolutely.
In yourself or just one or two people.
Yeah. And don't you think as well, Alec, it is very hard to manage people, because you could have someone in a company now that's managing people, and they could be an older person, and the chances are they are, because they're management, possibly, and they are so, not on purpose, but they could be so far disconnected from these new generation coming in.
Yeah.
They actually need, and what I was getting at earlier on, some form of coaching, maybe. Not to say that we're telling you how to do your job, but things have changed, and we know it's changed because they've been brought up on technology and they've been brought up on different things.
Yeah.
Have we not got to change our mindset slightly to try and?
Well, it's so interesting you mentioned that, and we are seeing this in the larger companies. They have a mentoring scheme. Now, mentoring is different from coaching, because mentoring is giving real experiences what I did, try and help you.
Yeah.
And the mentoring scheme is between the younger members of the organisation and the older, and the young members mentor the older members of staff, so they get
like
to understand more. Yeah,
Absolutely.
and that has been quite successful. And
Good.
again, I've spoken to some Gen Zs on this, and they love it because it does bridge that gap. But it's also an opportunity for them to tell people what they know. So you're forcing that communication.
You're forcing a teamwork exercise as well, and collaboration. Absolutely. And it's not. And what I get with this is, Alec, is these guys, like you said earlier, you spoke to someone and they were like, oh yeah, okay, I do that. Actually, they'd be very surprised when you sit them down. You could probably write them a CV, Alec, after speaking to them for half an hour and go, here you go, that's yours. And they'd be going, oh right, okay. It's about knowledge as well, isn't it? And having the confidence in yourself to be able to deliver that. Absolutely. So yeah, I think it's really, really interesting.
Very interesting points there, gents. Moving on now, we're going to be talking about skills of the future and AI. AI is obviously a huge topic at the minute, and it's something we're thinking about as a chamber, working on the LSIP, thinking about how AI is going to shape our skills needs in Cumbria, in perhaps just as short as a few years' time. Alec, what are you thinking about this development, and how can we prepare for the shift?
This is the hard question.
I'm glad you got that one.
Yeah, well, depending who you speak to, you get a different answer on what AI is going to do, how it's going to impact. I think the only kind of common consensus we get is that AI is going to impact every sector, every type of organization. That seems to be what we hear more reliably. But it's interesting when you look at this, what do we need to do to prepare for this? Because as you mentioned, Joe, it's around the corner. Actually, for some, it's happening now.
Yeah.
Okay. We've been talking a lot about upskilling and reskilling. That's for today. That's where we are. But the other key thing that we're going to require for that is to update our existing skills and think about maybe data analysis, programming, machine learning, AI ethics. Okay. Is this going to become more? We talked about the need for professionals' employability skills as being core. Are we actually also saying here that AI skills need to be core as well?
Yeah.
Now, at the organisation level and at college, university, and school. Because what that leads to then is more on data literacy development. Okay, because we need to understand these AI technologies, they're going to be integrated. So, how does our comfort and understanding of digital tools, basic coding, how is that going to impact what we do? But then the other interesting aspect here is about critical thinking and creativity, because it's suggested AI is going to automate a lot of tasks. Okay, so maybe some of the stuff we're doing at the moment we don't need to do. However, what's it going to be like when it comes to critical thinking? Is it going to give us more complex outputs? Is it going to give us more complex things to look at? Is it going to make decision making easier? But then again, what does that look like? How do I make a decision on what the output is? And so it goes on.
Yes,
so that's
yes.
another big area. Funnily enough, I'm not going to talk any more about it, but soft skills, professional skills, employability skills, still going to be key here, because if AI is all about the technical side, we still need human interactions. And maybe with the disruption that might well come from AI, is the need for communication and collaboration and everything not going to be even more because of the potential threats that or benefits that might come.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a kind of starting point. But I think overall, does industry and education now need to collaborate, if they're not already, start that process, but if they are, make that even stronger? And is there conversations going on that we're thinking about what's happening in universities and schools and thinking, well, is this the skills that are going to be required in 5 years' time, in 10 years' time? So there is this, I think, collaboration between industries and education is going to be absolutely key here. And then the other aspect of that is, how does that impact apprenticeships, right? Maybe apprenticeships have had, they're coming in at a certain level and have had to learn X and Y before. Actually, are they going to start to come in at a higher level?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
what does that then drive, and what is needed to get those apprenticeships to come in at that higher level? Now, that is the general kind of consensus for firms, but I think, or organizations, but when we look at leadership, right? How many leaders out there are actually getting a chance to step back and think, right, I need to put my strategic thinking hat on. What is coming around the corner? How is that going to impact my organization? And as a result, what are the long-term strategies that I need to deploy? Okay. There's going to be a lot more about the need for data literacy for leaders, right? Because potentially, depending on the sector, there's going to be much more data that you've got to analyze and you've got to make decisions on.
Yeah.
But then we've got change management, because if AI is going to make big changes to your organization and staffing, as we do, depending what happens, how do you manage that change? What impact is that change going to be? And for me, change management is a very, very important topic that some of us are just not good at.
No.
And we need to understand more about that. But then maybe a final kind of thing to think about, and these are just initial headlines, we could talk about this for a long time, is ethical leadership. Because, Kev, we touched on this earlier on, and how much comes out of AI? What's the biases? Is there going to be privacy issues? How much will AI be accountable for what we are doing?
Yeah.
So, if anything, this is going to drive, I believe, leaders, they're going to have to make more ethical decisions now. they're going to have to set standards for AI use.
It's
and what it
actually
does.
going to make your company question your leaders as well, isn't it? Because it's going to be a big thing, isn't it? Absolutely, yeah.
Because how does it then tie in? If you think about, you're developing your values, if you have your values, well, how does AI even align with that?
Yeah.
But then, probably the final one is risk management. We've talked about change.
Sure.
What risks will you adopt with AI?
Yeah.
And again, it's all coming. I mean, take away AI, you could argue, and for many, these are the skills of leadership anyway. But I think it's going to be even more focused on now that we've got to get these skills in place because AI
is coming.
Yeah, it's going to have such a big impact.
I think you're right. I think you're quite right, and I don't know whether you agree, Alec, but I think in any other situation or time, we probably would have been focused on AI as a community, as a county, as a country, a lot more. I think it's fair to say we've had such headwinds hit us, haven't we, over the past years with Brexit, with the pandemic, and I think people are kind of trying to put it in the back of their mind almost, aren't they? It's another thing of concern to worry about, and it feels like that to me at the moment,
And it's concerning people, but it's just the
uncertainty of how it's going to
it's actually going to look like. From predictions of the robots taking over the earth to things that are much more health solutions that can provide in medicine and other careers. But yeah, from listening to the two of you there, what's coming through is that perhaps it's not all doom and gloom. Like not all our jobs are going to go. Like we're going to have new jobs created. All the kind of manual stuff is going to go.
Yeah.
But then for an example with say marketing, a lot of the kind of the manual processes will go, the writing perhaps. But then you've got this new data side of it, which is just getting bigger and bigger all the time. And you go back 20 years, that you didn't really have that data in marketing. But now that's just going to be huge. And then so kind of analyzing the data and using the AI, that's going to become a new job.
Yeah.
Which is going to replace those old jobs, which is actually quite hopeful. Yeah.
I mean, if you think about even 20, 30 years ago, the question was, how many jobs will IT take?
Yeah.
Well, actually, a lot of people said it created many new jobs and many new positions that we didn't need then, but we need now. And actually, as you say, it can be much more enjoyable. I think what I like to emphasise is we need to start,
Yes.
This is the leader's job now to think about this, because you're right. Could this help with so many, increased profits, change the kind of service you provide? But do we just need that bit of time to step out the business? Because that's the other issue. Many leaders that I speak to are so in the business that they're not getting a chance to step out.
Yeah.
And even that little bit of time doing that, what difference could that actually make for where your business is going? And opportunities, profit, whatever it might be. Sometimes it's that even 2 or 3 days, I thought, boom, it can change things.
Ultimately, Alec, you won't have to worry about that in a few years' time because you'll just ask your AI.
Yeah.
Whether your business is going to be
ChatGPT,
successful, and it'll tell you, yes, it's going to be.
Yeah.
It's an interesting topic, isn't it? And it's going to be one it's certainly grown legs and it's moving quickly, isn't it? So I think it's definitely something we've got to be aware of, 100%, and be prepared for.
Maybe we'll just be able to say, Alexa, make me $1 million.
Exactly. That would be good.
That would be good.
Yeah.
So looking to kind of the here and now, coming up as 2024 approaches, thinking about all these issues we've discussed today, what can a business do to kind of build that most successful year out of 2024?
Well, I give some suggestions on that. I think it's really important to say to the audience, because I know some of you were listening to this thinking, this all sounds good.
Yeah.
But when are we going to do this? Because let's be realistic. We've got a lot of businesses that are in survival fight at the minute. They're trying to survive day to day.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thinking of the future, thinking about their team development is nice to have, but we're struggling to do this. And I think, if we think about, for businesses listening to this, what is available to help you? Now, we've got, for example, the government to help to grow. Some people have found that fairly useful. But I understand, Kev, there's other initiatives within the Cumbria Chambers that can help companies even start doing these type of things and start getting this focus and time to do this?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, obviously there's been some changes to the funding because obviously the European one now has ceased, the ERDF fund. That ceased in June, and we're just finishing that up now at the end of September. But within that, there's going to be other support brought forward. One of our ladies working in the Growth Hub, Leslie, she's working on a particular project in Barrow. So there will be support available, and I would urge anyone that wants to look at that support and find out about it is let us know. We're in a fact-finding mission at the moment where the councils have merged, that European money's gone. They are actually going to be, the government are giving it out, but it's going to the local councils and they will then prioritise where they're going to put that. So we don't know how much money that's going to be yet or what have you, but there is going to be some support. And another thing I think that we talked about, Alec, as well, is looking at bringing some groups together and talking about leadership and coaching and that sort of thing. I personally think that would be a great idea to get a few companies around the table, like with yourself and with me, and have a talk through, because I think the biggest message that I said at the beginning of this year was with LSIP was collaboration. I said that earlier, and I do believe it's absolutely 100%. Let's get some. We've had examples like this before. We've done them before. We can bring some people into the office and let's have a talk about and collaborate with each other and see if these problems are happening. The same problems are happening, because if you talk and you collaborate, you can help each other, can't you?
I think that's the interesting thing, because I see this with my coaching clients, regardless of sector. It's the same leadership challenges, typically, that we see. And I see with group coaching, or you could call it an action learning set. Mm-hmm. Think if you had 8 people around a table, what's this really going to cost? If you think about it, 8 people around a table, give us half a day a month, talk about your issues. It's confidential. Yeah. The amount of help that I'm sure you would get, and someone, you might have a challenge, and someone says, I had a similar challenge. This is what I had to do to resolve that. Yeah. And it's amazing how a confidential, safe space discussion can give so many benefits. So that number
it can
one,
be quite comforting as well for some people.
Because you're going to learn more about yourself as a leader. You'll actually probably learn more about the leadership management skills. Actually, you think, I'm better at that than I thought, or actually I've discovered that's a weakness and I need to deal with that. But the other key thing, I think, it actually helps you because some of us don't like being challenged. But then this will show you the benefits of being challenged, and and going forward.
It's something we've done quite a lot of in the past as a chamber and in the Growth Hub. You were involved in the strategic employers groups. Yeah. Can you talk a bit about those?
Yeah, I mean, it was on a broader piece to do with to do with the issues for companies going on in policy and that sort of thing. Yeah. Whereas this, I would say, is more drilling down into the leadership sort of things. But I think a forum like that is what you're saying is exactly right. And it'd be interesting if we can reach out to some people on the podcast and say, look, we would like to. Obviously, Alec has done these before, haven't you? And as you said as well, Joe, we've run similar sort of things. I think it would be a really good initiative for the LSIP project to run one of these, possibly from here in Carlisle. And if any companies want to be involved, to reach out to us. If not, I'll be reaching out to them and see if we can pull something together here and see what we can learn from it. Because I think it's plain to see that it's tough out there, but I think if the companies stick together and we can support each other, hopefully we can get through this. I'm not saying that we're going to answer every single problem, and there's lots of challenges, but this certainly could definitely be a benefit.
So that leads me on maybe a couple of notes I'll finish off with there. A couple of questions to finish off. Mm-hmm. As we're coming to the end of 2023, thinking everything we've discussed, questions to think about here. So what is your successful outcome for 2024? What issue impacting this for the last 12 to 24 months to help you shape a successful strategy, maybe realistic strategy? Mm-hmm. What additional support is required And is your organisation ready to execute your successful outcome? If not, what team development, what team foundations are required?
Yeah.
And I'd just like to leave those questions to the audience as a starting point.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's absolutely great. Yeah, and we know through through doing these before, and Alec obviously does as well, that they're only going to be a benefit. I realise the biggest challenge to a lot of the companies at the moment is the time, and I do totally understand that, and obviously I realise that. But without your time, we're just going to falter, aren't we? And these things won't work. So, I do appreciate that everyone is struggling. Well, not everyone is struggling, but it's tough out there because we've got shortage of staff, etc. But certainly, if you could spend an hour, Alec, do you think, or something like that?
Do you know, I was talking to a client the other week, and he was having some of the similar problems we're talking about here.
Yeah.
And all I said to him was, I gave a suggestion, said, look, what would it take for you to spend one day out of the office? All I asked, one day to think about things, to step out, clear the mind, and it's amazing.
Did he look horrified though, did he, Alec?
Yeah, I mean, his face went to the floor, I can't take a day out. However, he has come back, and he said, I needed that.
Yeah.
I can see things more clearly. For some of us, it's just a day. And when I started off, before I was coaching, I was doing a lot of training. And one key piece of advice, another guy that was self-employed said to me, he says, Alec, he says, promise me this. Every year, you'll spend 2 days out on your own, go and stay in a hotel, go in a nice place, and just think strategy. Yeah. I'll always remember that was the best piece of advice I was ever given.
So that's a yearly event there, is it? Yeah, excellent.
Honestly, what I was thinking when I was away and on my own was completely different.
Different mindset than from what you had.
Absolutely.
I think there's a lot to be said for it, isn't there? A lot to be said for it. Getting out of the office and talking through. And if we can do some of these sessions, I think that would be very interesting to see. We can give some help there.
Yeah, it's great advice there, Alec, and we'll put those questions in the show notes so that if there's any leaders doing some strategy days listening, they can use them in their process. One last question before we wrap up. This is just to touch on the next stage of the LSIP.
Yeah.
What are some of the positive outcomes you've already achieved through the LSIP, and what's next for the project over the next 2 years?
Yeah. The project now, I have done a lot of the data gathering earlier in the year, speaking to companies and training providers. We're going out and speaking to schools and colleges, like I said, and I think some of the highlights have been there. I was really, really aghast at when I went to speak at the school and at the college, Alec, and you'll probably back me up on this, because I just floated out there and said I'm being told by a lot of employers that soft skills are lacking. I was very conscious, as I said before, not to make a big deal of it because there was a lot of them, but all of these students recognise that. Now I think that's really, really important. Because if they recognise it, then obviously they understand there is an issue there. And I think those students coming to me and chatting and saying that has been instrumental in me setting up the focus groups with the schools. And that's something I took off my own back to do. But obviously we spoke to companies, we spoke to the training providers, and we set up these focus groups to carry on discussing and collaborating and see what people are doing. And I've done that with the schools, and already the schools are, these are the guys that it's going to be left to, isn't it? They're already saying things to me that I'm thinking, oh, right, yeah, I'm so glad I'm involved. And they are. We've got to remember that these guys have had, it's easy to say they're different generation, they're not like what we were. Yeah, we know that, they're not. And you weren't the same as your dad.
Absolutely.
He wasn't the same as, it changes. Change management, we're scared of it, aren't we? Yeah. So it is changing, but they're on the same side as us, so we've all got to work together here. And I think Cumbria particularly, being from outside of the region, I can see they do collaborate well. I don't know if you see that. They do. They care about this. And I think that's been, for me, some of the plus points have been the focus groups. As I say, I'm rattling on about those, but they were so positive. We had good attendance and we went through some good stuff. And that's continuing. And I'm now, as I say, I'm going out to companies to see what they're doing. You've got a lot of companies that are fitting in with the colleges and speaking to them. We've got hubs at some of the colleges where companies can go to. So this is really important stuff, and the training providers are recognising it is a changing world, because certainly when I was at school, Alec, that never happened, did it?
No.
When probably when you did, it wasn't like that. So I think we've not got to beat ourselves up on everything as well, because we are progressing. We have been thrown a hard one to get out of. We've had a lot of things to go through, but I think this project's shown, I've got lots of collaboration with people, and it's shown really good signs and positivity. And we're looking at other people that have got their training academies. Some of the engineers have got training academies, because they've realised that actually, let's take this forward ourselves. We want to be successful. We're going to do this. And I want to try and implement a plan with some of those for the future, and helping the smaller SMEs, as I said earlier, to maybe even be involved, and look at sharing possibly a graduate program to different companies. So a big company will go, well, they did 2 months here, they didn't really like it, but they went so-and-so, similar sort of thing, but they fitted in different. Change management, they were a different person, it fitted them better. And actually that person went there and it's worked better for them. Why not? It's not all of this is really hard. It's not rocket science, is this? We know what the problems are. Mm-hmm. We've just got to try and roll them out there and get them done. And I think, I've got to say to everyone that has been involved with this project, thank you very much. And, if you want to be involved and carry on, feeding into this, then do. If you're a smaller company, you want to go out to a school, you want to speak to schools, tell me. We could go out to schools. We can speak to schools. So I want to get they have got to be involved, because this is going to affect them, isn't it? So I think it's very, very important. But I do feel we're doing some really good work in Cumbria on this, and I'm hopeful that we're going to get where we want to be.
Really nice positive note to end on there, Kev. And we'll put all the LSIP LinkedIn accounts, Kev's LinkedIn page and Alec's LinkedIn page in the show notes so people can follow. Going back a second, Kev, to one of your ideas from the show.
Yeah.
This idea of perhaps a group of employers getting together in our Carlisle office.
Yes.
Where can people get in touch with you to inquire about that if they'd like to be involved?
Yeah. Please, as I say, I'd like to at least have 6 to 8 companies round a table with yourself, Joe and Alec, and we can talk through some of the leadership, management type style things and coaching and share some experiences of what's possibly gone right, what's not going right, etc. But I think it'd be very helpful to run one of those, and certainly if it went well, we would continue to run them and maybe run more. So if anyone would like to be involved with that, I'm quite keen to get that done. I'm not talking next week, but sort of October, November time, Alec, if that works with you. If you'd like to email me at kevin@cumbriachamber.co.uk or obviously DM me on LinkedIn or 07841 743 067 is my work mobile. By all means, give me a call. As I say, it'd be great if you approach me. I'm obviously going to go out there and try and do this, but if you fancy getting involved with us and been involved with the LSIP project on this side of things now, please do come forward, and we look forward to doing that with you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks again, Jets, for being with us today, and see you next time.